Happy Rosh Chodesh. Can you hear me? If anybody can give me a little thumbs up and mute yourself, let me know. Those of you on...
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so happy Rosh Chodesh, everyone. Rosh Chodesh Menachem. Before I begin, I want to say a huge mazel tov to my dear Mechutanista who's joining us today. Tova, on the Brit Milah of our grandson, Reuven Yosef Eilenberg. So, Mazal Tov should always be for Smachot. And so honored you were able to join us. Thank you. So, the name of the month is Menachem Av. And it's interesting that actually the original name of the month of Av was just Av. But over the years, it's changed. And the name Menachem was attached to it. So much so that it actually became part and parcel of the actual name of the month. What do I mean by that? Halachically, if somebody writes down the name of the month on, let's say someone has to write a get, and the halachot gitin, the halachot of Jewish divorce, are very, very, very strict. One nuance, one letter on or off, and the entire get can become pasul, and it's questionable whether they're really divorced, etc., etc. So, if you miswrite the name of the month on a get, the whole get is pasul. And yet, if a person writes for the month of Av, Menachem Av, it is considered completely 100% kosher. Meaning the name, although it wasn't the original name of the month, over the years it has evolved into the name of Menachem Av. The word Menachem literally means the comforter. And since the month of Av is the month of Tisha B'Av, the month on which the 9 days begin, and the destruction of both Batei Mikdash occurred on the 9th of Av, our Chachamim saw it fit to include the name Menachem, meaning to be what's it called? To be a comforter. And what does the name Menachem Av literally mean? The word Av means father. Which father are we talking about? We're talking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Eibishter, Hashem. Because as much as we are suffering in Galut, and we don't like being in Galut, and we are suffering, and we wish Mashiach would come, more than we want Mashiach, Hashem wants Mashiach. Because just as we are in Galut, so long as Mashiach hasn't come, the Shechina is in Galut too. It says, Ma Yisrael ba'Galut, Af Shechina imahem. That the Shechina is in Galut together with us. And therefore, when we're davening and praying for the coming of Mashiach Tzidkeinu, Hashem is very favorably disposed and wants to hear our prayers, especially during these auspicious days, these important days and meaningful days of the 9 days that begin today. It says that it's a etotzon. It's a time when Hashem is very close to us, specifically for the prayer of the Geula, of Mashiach. And how do we bring Mashiach? Specifically by learning about Mashiach. It says if you learn Hilchot Bet Bechira, if you learn all the halachot of the Bet HaMikdash, even just practical things such as how many steps were there, etc., how many rooms. Miriam Swerdlov has a really nice series that she does during these days, which she's going over the Lishkat Bet, what's it called? Meaning all the different parts of the Bet HaMikdash, and she is explaining what it means Baruchniut. So if anybody wants the link to that, please message me. I'm so happy to send it. You can even just join her WhatsApp group. She has a really nice group. But during yes.
Is Menachem Av something that the Chabad rabbis go by, or is it something universal?
No, darling, it's universal. No, sweetie, and it's been around for a long, long, long time. I didn't check the history how far back, but the name Menachem Av has been around for a tremendously long time. I'm not sure. The name Menachem was chosen because the word Menachem literally means to comfort. And when we're talking about us praying for Mashiach, we're comforting our Father in heaven. We're comforting Hashem. But according to the Gemara that cites different rulings as to who Mashiach can be, one of the names that it gives, it says Ushmo Menachem, that his name is Menachem. So people ask, does it mean literally his name has to be Menachem, or does it mean that he will represent this concept of comforting the Jewish people and comforting the Shekhinah and the entire world? But the name Menachem Av has been attached to this month for centuries. I could look up exactly when it started. I'm sorry, I'm not sure. Sorry, darling, that part I didn't look up. Sure. So Napoleon, who was on a quest to conquer the world, once passed by a Jewish synagogue on Menachem Av, on Tisha B'Av. It was the 9th of Av, and he hears crying and wailing and sobbing, and he turns to his officers around him and his advisors. He goes, go find out what's going on in there. Why are all these Jews crying? And they come back and they say, Your Majesty, they're crying because their holy temple was destroyed. And he gets livid. He says, what? Such a huge world event took place and nobody saw it fit to inform me? Why was I not told about it? Why do I need to find out about it by passing by this synagogue and finding out that the Jewish people have lost their temple? So they say, no, Napoleon, it didn't happen yesterday. This happened 1,700 odd years ago. And they're still crying 1,700 years later. And so Napoleon turned around and said, a people who could still cry with such passion and with such feeling for their temple 1,700 years later are people who for sure will merit to see it be rebuilt. That the fact that we are, yes, the month of Av on the one hand has its sense of negativity or sadness, if you will. During these 9 days in particular, we abstain from weddings, from live music, from even doing things like cutting our nails and doing a haircut and anything that makes us feel really good. We take on all the laws of mourners, but at the same time, the mourning is not a goal in itself. It's simply a catalyst to bring us to a much higher place, to bring us and to motivate us to the joy of the Geula, and to be able to see that Dafka by still recalling the destruction is the way through which we are going to bring about the rebuilding of the Bet HaMikdash. And we learn this also really from Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva lived during the destruction, lived through the most difficult time, and he passed by the place of the Har HaBayit where the Bet HaMikdash got destroyed. He was together with Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Akiva. He was the fourth one. And they passed by and they're looking at the ruins and there were tears streaming down their eyes. And Rabban Gamliel, Rabbi Eliezer, and Rabbi Yoshua burst out crying. And they particularly cry because they look at the spot where they knew the Chodesh HaKodashim stood, where the Aron Kodesh was. This was the Holy of Holies. This is the place where only the Kohen Gadol could go on once a year on Yom Kippur. And it was so awesome and it was so great, and it was only by Hashem, so to speak, inviting, allowing them to be there. And instead, what are they seeing? They're seeing a hole in the ground, like a pit over there, and out of the hole are crawling out little foxes. And Rabban Gamliel, Rabbi Yoshua, and Rabbi Eliezer burst out crying. And Rabbi Akiva burst out laughing. And they turned to him and they said, Rabbi Akiva, Maka, like what happened? How are you crying? And he turns to them and he says, how are you? Sorry. They tell him, how are you laughing? Sorry, I take that back. They see he's laughing. So they tell him, Rabbi Akiva, how are you laughing? To which he responds and says, how are you crying? And they tell him, what do you mean, how are we crying? Look, the foxes are coming out from where the Chodesh HaKodashim once stood. And he says, that's true. But remember what our Nevi'im said. And if you look at the Nevi'im, Zechariah ben Berachia, Yirmiyahu HaNavi, and Uriah HaNavi, all predicted the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. But they also predicted that, and they predict, one of the things they say is, Shualim Yalchubo, Al Har Hashem Shoshamem, it's an Eicha, Shualim yalchu bo. That in the mountain of Hashem, it's going to be left desolate, and foxes will roam around. But with the same token, what does it say? It also says, all different psukim, v'hashivot mina legvulecha, and v'shavu. I'm so sorry, I didn't write down the psukim. Me'eretz Ashur v'anidachi me'eretz Mitzrayim, right? Those psukim that talk about the return. And so Rabbi Akiva says, now that I see that the negative nevuah has come true, that foxes are crawling around, and Yirmiyahu's words have come true. He said foxes will crawl around, and they have. And now that I see that nevuah has come true, I'll know that also the positive nevuah is going to come true. The nevuah of V'shavu ligvulam, that we're going to return to our land of Israel, and we're going to rebuild the Bet HaMikdash. And as I said earlier, specifically, this time is an auspicious time for the Geula Amitit Ve'Ashlema. And I want to read something from the Rebbe. I'm going to read it from inside because I felt it was very powerful. In Chayenu, which is, it's a weekly magazine. It has in it Chumash Tehillim and Tanya for the day, which is, and also Hayom Yom, and thoughts on Geula and Mashiach. It's a lovely, incredible magazine to be. You can get it online, or you can get it the physical. You get both. I like this one because I can use it on Shabbos. During the week, I tend to use the online app that they have. But in it, they have one caption, one part, which goes day by day about the Geula, and it connects it with the Parsha of the week. And sorry, I looked, this is on Shabbos, so I just have to find where it is. I looked it up, sorry, I'm going to just find it. I want to quote the words of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, where the Rebbe talks about, now that we're starting Sefer Bamidbar, Sefer Devarim, that we've concluded Bamidbar, and now we're beginning the new Sefer Devarim, and we're actually moving on to the next stage. And I'm going to read the words inside, if you will. Okay. At the conclusion of the book of Bamidbar, we are told that the Jews encamped in the plains of Moab, on the banks of Yarden. The book of Devarim, however, describes the location as on the other side of the Yarden. So they were basically in the same place, they hadn't really moved, but when you read the words carefully, now, but once we've stepped into reading the book of Devarim, is describing them as being on the other side of the Yarden, as already being in the land of Israel, as already being in the Geula. The first 4 books of the Torah describe events in the past and present, whereas Devarim is the preparation for the future, entering the Holy Land. Bamidbar tells us that the Jews tackled the greatest forces of impurity, the plains of Moab, in the final stage of their desert service. In Devarim, they had to focus exclusively on entering the Holy Land. Nowadays, and this is the part I wanted to read. So basically, all through the other books, especially through Bamidbar, it's talking about tackling all the negative forces in the world. But once we start Devarim, it changes. Now the focus is on moving forward, on the future, on only positivity, on only goodness, on no more negativity. And what's the Rebbe's words? He says, nowadays as well, we have passed the final and darkest stage of exile. We must focus less on subduing and rectifying evil, and instead exert every effort in preparing ourselves for the imminent redemption. And I want to quote this in particular because there's so much out there that seems to be predicting negative things, and that there's forces of evil, and the focus of Geula for many is, oh, look at how bad things are, Mashiach must be coming. In reality, that shouldn't be our focus. The focus is to be, look how great things are, Mashiach is coming. We need to focus on the future, and we mustn't give any heed or any credence or any attention to negative events in the world. This past year, over 40 million planes landed safely. 40 million planes that around the world, more than 40 million, traveled all over the world, had safe flights, everyone was safe, everybody was happy. It was good for everyone. And then there was one plane that crashed. And what did we hear on I think the one over Iran? What did we hear in the news? For weeks, all they were discussing was the dangers of flying and this one plane that, listen, it's very sad. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not minimizing the event. It was incredibly sad, and there should never be any loss of human life and any tragic events. But we also need to put a lot of focus. I'm just using this as an example, yeah? But we need to put a lot of focus on positivity as opposed to the negativity. And you know,
sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
Can you please mute everyone? I'm so sorry.
Sure. I'm so sorry. I'm going to mute us, and at the end I'll unmute us. I didn't know if we had...
Thank you so much.
Of course. I'll mute us. Sorry, let me just make sure that I'm putting us correctly. So I've got... okay, I'm going to unmute. Okay, I hope you guys can hear me better now. Sorry, I'll just need a... okay, just if somebody can give me a thumbs up with your hand so I could see that you can hear me because I've muted you. Okay, hopefully you guys can hear me, yeah? Okay, toda. Thank you so much. Okay, perfect. Okay, so the Rebbe's focus was always on the positiveness of the Geula. Stop putting emphasis on negativity. Don't even look in that direction. And I know that there is a svara and an idea and a thought that if we scare people, God forbid, maybe that will motivate them to do teshuvah. But guys, it isn't MS, and it's not. We need to be very careful with that. We need to be very careful how we're presenting the Eibishter, how we're presenting a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem isn't an angry God sitting there waiting to, God forbid, deem out punishments. Rahman al-Tzalan. Hashem is an all-loving God. He's a kind God. And yes, I think we discussed it many weeks ago that there were Nevi'im that had to predict negative things, but it was so against what they wanted to do. They would run away and try their hardest not to ever open negative, in their mouth in a negative way. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Kel, Av, Achum, V'Chanun. More than we want Mashiach. He wants Mashiach berachamim, with mercy, with goodness, with tov v'ni'eh, with joy. And the emphasis of the Rebbe, that the Rebbe has really driven home. If you read the Rebbe's Sichos, and those of us who Baruch Hashem had the tremendous chos of standing by the Rebbe's Farbringans and Sichos, but Baruch Hashem, everything is available, and the truth is that the younger generation today are so much more knowledgeable than maybe some of us who actually stood by the Rebbe's Farbringans, because they really pick up those Sichos and learn them. The Rebbe's emphasis was always, and the Rebbe said it as a nevuah, by the way, always that Mashiach is coming, and we should focus on him coming barachamim, and that the fighting against negative evil forces, that avoda is done. That's already passed. When the Rebbe said, open your eyes, he kept saying, open your eyes, Mashiach is here. What did the Rebbe mean? The Rebbe meant that the Yetzer Hara and the negativeness is got no koach anymore. Just go out with positive messages. I'm not saying let people, stop doing mitzvot, God forbid, chas v'chalila. Obviously, that's not the message. We need to go out and we need to encourage people to light Shabbos candles and to do Taharas HaMishpacha and kashrus and the men for tefillin and mezuzot, etc. But the focus should always be on the positive and on, because that's really the emet of it. That's really the truth of it. Hashem is, I think we can each be honest with ourselves, with our relationship with Hashem. If we really think of Hashem, what do we all feel? I mean, I'd imagine so, is that Hashem is Kel Avachum V'Chanun. He's an all-loving, merciful Father who only wants to give us good. And in these days of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe, because now we're doing Igeret HaTshuva, we're winding to the end. By the way, there is a great, every day, 10 minutes a day, Rabbi Shmuley Aber gives a class. Also a fantastic class. It's only 10 minutes, it's tiny bite size of that day's Chitas. And he explains it so succinctly and so clearly. You can always take away a message that's a palpable, understandable message that you can really apply to yourself. But it takes a couple of days of listening because it's kind of midstream. It flows one after the other. But either way, so Rabbi Aber was explaining sorry, that's my train of thought. Hilchos Tshuva, that the Alter Rebbe explains that the minute you say, I'm sorry to Hashem, Hashem immediately accepts that apology, even infinite amount of times. Of course, we don't do echta v'ashuv. We don't say I'll sin and then I'll say sorry. Even then, there's room for teshuvah. But the Rebbe really, the Alter Rebbe emphasizes in Igeret Tshuva that the one who really needs to give forgiveness isn't Hashem. Hashem always does. Say sorry, He'll give you forgiveness. The one who really needs to give forgiveness is yourself. The reason we are so stuck is because we think, oh my goodness, I did so much bad, for sure Hashem is angry with me. Or look at the world, it's so bad, for sure Hashem is angry with the world. God forbid, God forbid. And we mustn't focus on that. It's not true. Hashem loves the world. Hashem loves all of humanity. Learn the story of Yonah. And Hashem wants, what does it say? Oshaim Odenam. I forgot the pasuk from Tehillim, sorry. It doesn't say that God forbid Hashem destroys the Rashaim. It just says that Rashaim won't exist anymore because they'll all become tzaddikim. There won't be rishut because they're going to become tzaddikim. The focus really needs to be on forgiving ourselves. And that brings me to the story of the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. We all know the famous story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. Just very quickly, Ploni, who is not even named, we don't even know his name, Ploni makes a huge party, invites Kamsa by accident. Bar Kamsa is invited, his sworn enemy, and he throws him out of the party. And everybody sees, and all the leaders see, and all the rabbis, and nobody stands up for Bar Kamsa. He goes to the emperor of Rome. He tells him the Jewish people are planning a rebellion, and the raya, the proof is that the sacrifice that you sent to them to bring up in the Bet HaMikdash, that sacrifice they don't actually give up in the Bet HaMikdash. They actually reject your sacrifice, which means they're rejecting you. They're not praying to their God to keep you safe and strong and great. And so the king doesn't believe him, and he sends the cow, and Bar Kamsa goes and he causes a mum on the cow. He cuts the tongue or the lip of the cow, making a very small, almost invisible cut on the tongue of the cow, but it deems it puzzle. It's not kosher it's not kosher to be brought up as a korban, and the Jewish people don't bring it up as a korban, and that led to the destruction. So what happened? Why did Chazal tell us? I'm sorry, my camera is going funny. What happened? Chazal tell us that it all started because of sinat chinam, hatred for no reason. If you went and you asked Ploni, why do you hate Bar Kamsa? He wouldn't know. He doesn't know. He can't even remember. They had a fight a long time ago, and he can't remember what it was even. And it was just hatred for no reason. You even see today, I mean, this actually, I took this from Firma Shapiro's talk, an incredible talk, which she was sharing, and I've seen this myself with people that I've like tried to help them get over difficulty, where they have hatred to somebody, and 20 years later, they're still not talking to this person. And when you ask them why, they don't even remember the reason anymore. If something you can't remember 20 years later, it means it was never real in the first place. Emet endures. Something that's true will last forever. If you can't remember it anymore, then it wasn't true in the first place. The word for excuse in Aramaic is the word amasla or emetla, amatla, depending if you're pronouncing it Sephardi or Ashkenazi, which means the word excuse. If you hyphenate the word in Hebrew, it becomes emet lo, which means it's not true. Again, I took this from Firma Shapiro. Thank you, Firma. Which means it's not true. That your excuse is just an excuse. It isn't true. What do I mean by that? When we have feel negative toward other people, it's really because inside of us, we don't feel good about ourselves. We have never forgiven ourselves for our shortcomings, for our wrongdoings, for anything, inadequacies, things like that. We haven't forgiven ourselves. And when we see it in others, it's actually them just working as a mirror image. The Baal Shem Tov tells us, when we see something wrong in another person, the reason Hashem is making you see it is because Hashem is holding up a mirror for you to look up at and tell you, hey, reminder, maybe you need to fix this in your own, in your personal growth, in your personality, in your character. And that when we see something negative in others, subconsciously, really what we are seeing is something negative in ourselves. And it's something that we've never forgiven ourselves for. The Alter Rebbe teaches us that we need to start with, before we can love others, you need to love yourself, and you need to stop being so hard on yourself. You need to understand that you are made up of two souls. You have a chelek elokam imal mamash, a part of God that is your neshama, and it is untouched, and it will always forever be perfect and holy and pure forever and ever, and can never get tainted. Might get blocked, that it's not shining, but it's never tainted. Right? The Alter Rebbe gives the mashal of either the one thick curtain or the many thin curtains. And then you've got a nefesh abamit, an animalistic soul that pulls you towards materialism, pulls you towards physicality, is very insensitive to spirituality. And the Alter Rebbe teaches us, don't hate the soul. You're seeing that your animal soul is struggling under its weight, struggling under its burden of trying to make it through. Don't hate it, love it, try to help it. And by feeling good about yourself and understanding that life is a journey, it's about growing, it's about every day becoming better and better, and trying to every day outdoing ourselves from the day before. We don't compete with others, we only compete with ourselves. And so when we start to feel good about ourselves, Torah is teaching us, you will start to feel good about others. And again, a beautiful story that Firma shared was a story of a shaliach in Antwerp who was very surprised one day. A man who had been very, very opposed to Lubavitch and to the Rebbe's teachings, he knocked on his door or called him, whatever, and said, I'd like you to start teaching me Chassidus. And he says, I'm delighted, but I'm very surprised. What happened? For years and years, you were so venomly outspoken against the Rebbe and against Lubavitch. And he said, because our children are in school together, in the Firm School in Antwerp, and children don't lie. Children say things what they hear at home. I think all of us as educators know that, and as mothers. And they say things simply and as it is, and you know, they have no agenda. They just kind of repeat. And he said, my daughter turned to your daughter and told her, my daddy hates your Rebbe. And without missing a heartbeat, the little girl turns around and said, well, my Rebbe loves your daddy. If you looked at the Lubavitcher Rebbe loved every single Jew. Anyone who came to him, when you walked past him, he saw you for the most perfect potential that you could be. And to him, you were already there. And what he focused on is the beautiful chelek eloka mimal mamash that you have within you. And that's what we need to focus on. We need to focus on ourselves. We need to focus on our fellow Jews, and by extension, on the entire world. And we have to remember that each person has their own journey and their own fingerprint, so to speak, that they need to affect the world. That only they can do that and nobody else. Just like your fingerprint is never ever going to be repeated again. It never existed in the past. No one else had your fingerprint, and no one else will have your fingerprint in the future. Your fingerprint is unique. if it's true for something as simple and as mundane as the print on your fingers, that when you touch something, you're leaving a fingerprint on this world that nobody else can mimic, nobody else has, how much more so is your neshama, which is a chelek elokam imal mamash, that how much more so the effect that you're having on the world, and that each one of us has our piece of the world to correct, our piece of ourselves to grow. And really that's when the Rebbe kept saying that working with negativity is over, that avoda is done and finished with. And Higia Zman Geulatchem, the Geula has commenced, it's begun, it's started. We need to move to the next stage. What's the next stage? What's Mashiach? Guys, when Mashiach comes, there's still going to be free choice. During Galut, the free choice was between good and bad. During Mashiach's time, it's going to be between good and better. And perhaps that's what the Rebbe is telling us. He's telling us, listen, the test today is just between good and better. Know that you've got the kochot. Know that Hashem is right there by you. He's helping you. He's guiding you. Focus on the positiveness, on your own positivity, yourself, and imbue it outward and affect the world around you and see everybody else in that same positive light. You know, last week, a week ago, my daughter Rifki went into labor. And it was a third baby, one after the other. And so we were rushing to the hospital midnight. And my son-in-law, bless him, Chaim, was driving. And I, thank God, being a doula, could actually go with her, even though only one person could attend, but I was permitted to enter with her. And here we were driving from Great Neck to Brooklyn to her hospital. And, you know, her doctor is an amazing doctor, but he only gives birth over there. And GPS took us the wrong way. And poor girl, she was really, really in very intense labor pains, and they were coming back to back. And all I wanted was to get her into that hospital and to relieve her. And, you know, sitting in a car was so uncomfortable for her, and she was in so much pain. So we finally, as we realized that we were lost and GPS took us to the wrong medical building, that was just a medical building and not a hospital, and we didn't know where to go, and, you know, like the whole fluster of it, we see a police car. So we start to honk and flash the cars for him, flash the lights so he should stop and guide us. And so he does stop, and we roll down the window, and I could see both the policemen in the car were giving us these growling looks, like, so what do you want from us now? And I remember thinking, why are you responding like that? And I scream out, I say, please, she's in active labor, where's the hospital? And immediately their face broke into a huge kind smile. And they said, oh, is that what you need? Of course. And they put up the sirens and they said, don't worry, follow us, we'll take you. And what would have been a 10-minute run, they took us within literally 3-4 minutes. And rushed us, Baruch Hashem, everything went well. And I just went into the hospital with her, I knew nothing of it. But my son-in-law, Chaim, who needed to park the car, was chatting with the policeman. And they said, we're sorry, you know, when you started honking and flashing your lights at us, he said, we've been getting so much negative attention. We thought you were trying to like poke fun at us or yell at us or something very negative. They said, we're sorry, we didn't realize that you just needed our help. And of course, as soon as they did that. Why am I sharing this? When we come from a place of positiveness, when we turn to others with love and kindness, and even just something, can you please help me? And we never attack others in any way. Immediately they react and they respond alike. They too, I mean, okay, this is a very practical story, but I want to tell you, you see it all across the board, everywhere, that when you're kind and you're nice to others, when you don't judge others, they respond in the like. You know, there's many famous, I wish I had time for the stories, but again, it's a very famous story I tell the kids this time of year in camp, called Big Moish, I call him, Shimshon. It's in the Storyteller, where there was this man who was terrorizing the town, and the rabbi really got angry with him, and he hated him. He was said nothing would fix this man, until the rabbi realized that the only way he can fix this Big Moish Shimshon guy was by not hating him in his heart. And one day when Shimshon comes to attack him, the rabbi on the side of the road. It was again stories. He was on the middle way to a Brit Milah. The Rebbe tells the Shamash, stop the wagon. I want to go outside and pray mincha. And he prays an extremely long mincha. And during that mincha, he prays to God. He says, please, God, I'm so angry and so bitter toward this Shimshon who's terrorizing our village. Please help me to love him. And he couldn't find anything good about him. Everything was negative. Until he remembered what? He remembered 1 minute. Hashem loves Shimshon. This boy, this guy, is a chelek elokam mimal mamash. And when we turn to others and view them and see them with that lens, that they are a chelek elokam mimal mamash, that they are a spark of Hashem. And before you start talking to someone, remind yourself, Hashem loves this person. I love Hashem. So if he loves this person, I'm going to love that person too. It's like I love the one whom my beloved loves. I love Hashem and he loves this person. So I'm going to love that person too. And by the same token, we need to turn it inward, guys. We always need to feel good about ourselves and know that we've got the tools, know that we're doing the right thing, know that we are bringing Mashiach and that we are turning this world into a very positive, beautiful world. And I'll just end with this one thought. Again, I apologize. I saw this on JLI. I can't remember the name of the speaker, but I felt he put it so nicely. He gives the mashal that there was this climber, wanted to climb a mountain, and he figured it's going to take him a month to climb to the top of the mountain. And so he preps enough food and drinks and everything, and he starts his climb up the mountain. And about halfway up, 2 weeks later, a helicopter approaches, and the guy tells him, are you okay? Do you need help? He says, no, I'm fine. He says, how long have you been here? He says, I've been 2 weeks already. And he tells him, so how much longer will it take you to reach the top? He says, well, by my estimation, another 2 weeks. And the helicopter driver tells him, the pilot says, I'll land, there's room, you can hop on, and I'll take you to the top of the mountain. It's going to take a maximum of 3 minutes, 2 minutes. And the guy laughs. He says, no, you don't understand. Of course, I want to reach the top of the mountain, but it's not just about being at the top of the mountain. I want to do the climb. It's about the journey. Of course, we want to be at the top of the mountain. We want Mashiach. And the Rebbe tells us in no uncertain terms, very clearly, that Mashiach can and Be'ezrat Hashem will come in an instant. That the Bet HaMikdash, again, it was somewhere in the VeGeula Chayenu, where the Rebbe describes that the Bet HaMikdash is already built. It sounds so far-fetched to us, but the Rebbe says it's up in Shamayim. Everything is ready. The physical Bet HaMikdash, we're not seeing it, we're not understanding it. You know, I recall again, Tova, a few weeks ago, you sent me a video with, it was hailing in Brooklyn, and the pieces of hail were these massive rocks of ice. It was incredible. It almost looked like, like miraculous. So for us to think of a physical Bet HaMikdash coming down from Shamayim sounds very, very far-fetched. But we know that Torah is Torah Temet. And when the Rebbe tells us that the Bet HaMikdash is ready, and it's ready to come, and Hashem wants to send it down from Shamayim, and that when Mashiach comes, when Bet HaMikdash will come down, Mashiach will just fix the hinges on the doors. He'll do the finishing touches. We know that Mashiach can come in an instant. By the same token, we have to understand that Mashiach's coming is also a journey that we're all going through every single day. Whilst every day Mashiach is ready to come, Be'ezrat Hashem, he'll come today, and he'll come fully, and will be in the Bet HaMikdash. And Keni Ratzon, amen, really, because it's ready and it's happening. We still have to do that climb. We still have to do our part of it. And if I may suggest, guys, that our part of it is to really focus, like the Rebbe said, acts of goodness and kindness towards others, towards ourselves, and never to, God forbid, point fingers. And I apologize that I am bringing this up again and again, but there's been so many videos out there that I try not to see, but I do get sent it on a daily basis where there's people who are pointing fingers and saying, oh, look, this has happened because people are bad, people are not keeping this and people are not keeping that. You know what? We're all on a journey. Each person has their fingerprint to imprint on the world, their neshama print to imprint on the world. Each person has their journey to get to Mashiach. And it doesn't mean that everybody has to be Shomer Torah and Mitzvot when Mashiach comes. Of course we want them to. Of course we work out there and we do as much as we can to encourage them and teach them and make it pleasant and give out Gom Miftzayim, etc., etc. But there's two things that the Rebbe says. Number one, the Rebbe tells us that, this one's from the Rebbe, that we all tinok shenishba. The entire generation, after so many hundreds of decades of being in Galut, centuries of being in Galut, we're all tinok shenishba. Every one of us is like a little baby that got snatched away from his father's arms and is being impacted and affected by the negative goyim around him. So that's number one. And the other thing my father, I remember, once taught me, it says that the door of Mashiach will be either kulo zakai or kulo chayav. They'll either be, everybody will be great tzaddikim, or everybody will be, God forbid, the opposite. And the Rebbe explains that the great, we don't know what a tzaddik is. I'm not talking about a tzaddik of Tanya, but I mean a person who's zakai. That's the word he's saying. Each person has their mitzvot, their part that they need to affect their journey. And you're not there to say, just because it doesn't look on the outside correct, doesn't mean that their mitzvah of, let's say, kibud avaim or tzedakah or whatever people are doing. And Mashiach will come. If they've not yet known how to keep certain mitzvot, the Mashiach will come and they're going to come running. They're going to come bashing the doors of the Chabad house down and of their rabbis and of their shuls and say, hey, I really want to learn how to keep Taharat HaMishpacha, or I really want to learn how to keep Kashrut, etc. So by believing in ourselves, by believing in others, most importantly, by believing in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who really wants to bring for us the Geula Ha'amitit V'Ashlema, the complete, the true Geula, the complete Geula, the way that Hashem envisions it, the way that Hashem sees it. May it happen speedily, may it happen now, especially during these incredibly auspicious days of the 9 days, because in their essence, they really are very joyful days. And when Mashiach comes, we will see it just like something that falls very, very low actually comes from a very, very high place. And therefore, the 9 days leading up to the 9th of Av, in this world, they look very negative. But in their essence, in their source up in Shamayim, these are very, very auspicious, very holy days. And we are told when Mashiach comes, Tisha B'Av is going to become the greatest Yom Tov. May it be this year, Be'ezrat Hashem Tiyeh Shnat Pdut, to be a year of salvation. That really Hashem will bring Pdut, Hashem will bring the Geula, and we'll all celebrate together with the coming of Mashiach Tzidkeinu. I'm going to unmute, guys, instead, in case anybody wants to ask any questions. Okay. I think if anybody has any questions or anything, you're welcome to ask. Sorry. But thank you for joining, everyone.
I heard once that during, once we're redeemed, that there'll be man. Is that something that you know about?
Yeah, I have heard that too, yes. Well, we'll definitely find that Tzinsenet Haman. The Tzinsenet Haman is the, they kept a flask together with the Luchot. Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu to keep a, what's it called? To keep a flask filled with man in it, so that it will remain for all generations. So definitely that one we will find. But sorry, I just have to charge my phone. But we may that I know. But it sounds like we will have man again possibly. I'm guessing. I should look up that one up. But the Tzinsenet we will find, and we will be able to taste it, which is so exciting. Actually, I've always wanted to taste man. Baruch Hashem.
Yeah. I'm saying, like, to not have to prepare or like go and buy food or anything like that. It'll just be available to pick every day.
Okay, so let me explain to you. There's two different opinions, and even within those opinions, there's different stages. That when it talks about, for example, it talks about food growing on the trees. When Mashiach comes, the food will be extremely available. You will walk out and be able to pluck trees. That the trees will actually grow ready-made pastries. So according to some opinions, and I'm sorry, I don't have my Mara Mekomot here to see who says what. According to some opinions, it actually means literally that you will go outside and you will literally pluck fruit from the tree, or pastries from the tree, or bread, or gourmet sabzi, or whatever, right? But according to the Rambam, the Rambam holds that in the beginning, olam keminhago noheg, and the Rambam really stresses this: that lo ya'aleh el hadat sheMashiach tzarich la'asot nisim. Don't expect Mashiach to do any miracles. According to the Rambam, he doesn't even have to have nevuah, doesn't even have to have prophecy. He just has to be a descendant of David HaMelech, who gets crowned as a king by the Jewish people and reestablishes the monarchy of the Jewish people. And then it takes time. The beginning years of Mashiach, according to the Rambam, are very natural, normal years, the way we know it. And then eventually, because if the Rambam talks about it in two different places, he talks about it in Hilchos Melachim, and he talks about it in, I don't know if it's Hilchot Tshuva or in Igeret, one of his Igrot. I'm sorry, again, I apologize. But there he describes Mashiach very differently than how he describes it in Hilchot Melachim. In Hilchot Melachim, he says, no, it's a very natural, normal world. Everybody, it just means that we will no longer be subjugated to other kings. We will have our own royal family back again, and the monarchy will return to the Jewish people. But in the other Igeret, he describes it as an incredibly miraculous world. He talks about the dead coming back to life, which of course, that's part of the 13 principles of faith. The Rambam holds that all across. You need to believe in the dead coming back to life. And that's something that is going to happen from Hashem himself. What the Rambam disputes is how much of the miraculous world will happen because of technology, because the world will just have evolved. And so if we're talking about trees suddenly producing pastries, will that be a miracle that's happening that's above the world, or will it be something that technology will have accomplished? According to many opinions, today that you can just go and buy a ready loaf of bread, and you don't have to bake it, you have to go to the mill to grind the wheat and then sift the wheat and then all that, and you could just immediately buy yourself a ready-made loaf of bread. That's already the fulfillment of that prophecy. So it is very diverse, in the prophecies are very diverse, because it's also talking about different spans of time. Where are we holding now as far as Geula? The only thing I could tell you that according to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Geula has already commenced, and it started with the Gulf War. To the Rebbe, Mashiach began, Hitchalta de Geula, the beginning of Geula, in its very practical way, began with the Gulf War. There were others who claimed Hitchalta de Geula started 1948, when the Jewish people returned to Israel as a sovereign state. It's according to some opinions. But again, the one I really study is the Lubavitcher Rebbe's teachings. According to him, it only began with the Gulf War. So 1991, I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact dates. I think it's 91. It was 91. Wow, it's almost 30 years now. But no, Be'ezrat Hashem, regardless, it's going to be a very, very happy, very positive, very healthy, very revealed good kind of world, Be'ezrat Hashem, and may it happen very speedily. It's interesting though that when the Rebbe used to talk at Farbrengens, the Rebbe would talk very clearly about things like the shuls all flying to Israel, and that it will happen very instantaneously. I remember one Shabbat the Rebbe spoke, and the Rebbe said, how will we know? It says Mashiach can't come on Shabbos. But then the Rebbe says, not necessarily. We can't wait till Motzei Shabbos for Mashiach to come. That's too soon. It's too late, I'm sorry. We need him sooner. I remember this so well. And the Rebbe says, we can't. What you're telling me, that we're going to wait for Motzei Shabbos? It's only, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a few hours till Motzei Shabbos. How can it be that we're satisfied to wait 3-4 hours till Motzei Shabbos for Shabbos to come, for Mashiach to come? Mashiach can come right here, right now. And then the Rebbe says, but how will we know? He says, Mashiach can come right here, right now, on a Shabbos. And if he'll come right here and right now, he'll explain to us how it was that he was able to come on Shabbos, because there's different opinions and different halachot to claim that Mashiach can't come on a Shabbos. So the Rebbe says that Mashiach will come on Shabbos, because that day was Shabbos, so we don't have to wait anymore. And then he'll explain to us how he was able to come on Shabbos. And how will we know he came? He says we will know Mashiach came because it's going to be announced on the radios and on all the TV channels. That's how we will find out. But Shabbos, you can't turn on any TV or radios. So it's not a problem. Right outside the shul, there's policemen. If you go to the policemen, they have radios. You'll ask them if Mashiach comes. And I remember when the Farbrengen was over, maybe 3,000 yeshiva bacharim who were there all ran out looking for policemen, each one asking them, has Mashiach come? Has the Messiah arrived? I don't know what those policemen were thinking, but that was, and to the Rebbe, that was very practical. We will find out. You'll find out on the news. You'll find out today it will not be radios anymore. Today it will be through WhatsApp or Instagram or Facebook or whichever kind of media. And when it does in the book, and I'm sure I mentioned it before, but even in the book, and I hope I'm quoting it correctly because I didn't read it inside. I just heard it. I don't like to quote books I haven't actually opened and read. But I did hear it quoted from the book Netzach Yisrael, that when Mashiach comes, he'll be seen and heard simultaneously all over the world. This book was written 300 years ago, and it sounded so phenomenal and so miraculous. But 1951, when the Rebbe took on the Nesiut, and the Rebbe started talking, the first thing that he did was, and he had a lot of opposition, by the way, is he said, God created cable television. And people think TV is bad. And the Rebbe says it's terrible to watch negative things on TV, things that pull us away from God. But if you use the TV to teach Torah, it's an incredible tool. You can reach thousands, millions of people at once. And the Rebbe back in 1951, it was very 51, maybe 60, I don't know exactly. Again, I don't know the exact times, but we've got movie videos dating way back from then, where the Rebbe would air all his Farbrengens on cable TV. It's okay. It was way before Instagram came out or whatever, Facebook came out. But the Rebbe's notion was that the world has evolved and progressed from a technical perspective in order to herald the Geula, that it's not just Hashem affecting the Geula from above, it's this physical world lifting itself also, whether by learning Torah and keeping mitzvot, but also by just harnessing the development of the world and using it for Mashiach. Use it to teach Mashiach and Geula, use it to teach that thing. And so when the book Netzach Yisrael talked about Mashiach being in one place but being seen and heard all over the world, 300 years ago, it sounded very miraculous. Today, it's something we do every day. And it's something that has been done by rabbis and by tzaddikim for decades already. So, Be'ezrat Hashem, though, I hope Hashem will, whatever it will be, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should make it happen now already, because really, we've had enough of this galut. And, and much as we've had enough, I'm sure HaKadosh Baruch Hu has had enough, and He's Kel Avachum Bechanun. He'll bring it peacefully, joyfully, in a happy way, and good for the entire world. Be'ezrat Hashem. Okay, thank you so much, guys. Thanks for joining. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
One message. Thank you. Thanks, Motek. Mazel Tov Tova again. Again, to be always smachot, Baruch Hashem.
Question for you.
Yes, sure, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm sorry, I just don't know who's talking, but I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, here, I'll put me on.
No worries.
Okay. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Baruch Hashem.
Thank you. Good. I had a question. So, I sometimes, first of all, thank you so much for such a beautiful share. You explained the importance of like thinking and seeing things in a more positive light. But sometimes I hear rabbis explaining like who will be saved from Moshiach and how they'll be like, how exactly they'll be saved from it, like what you need to do to be saved from it. And I know that they're trying to make people to do teshuvah, but how can one like navigate through doing teshuvah but still be positive at the same time?
Okay, so I'm going to take your question and just divide it into two. Number one is who is going to be saved, and secondly, how do we navigate teshuvah in a positive way? So, to answer your first question, no Jew will be left behind. It's something that, there's an Avram Fried song about it. There is no such thing as any Jew being left behind. Every Jew is a chelek elokam imal mamash, is a spark of God himself that can never separate from God, can never get tainted, can never get defiled. You have a Jewish soul, a neshama of Hashem, a part of Hashem that's perfect and can never get defiled. And when Mashiach comes, everybody's going to be redeemed. Some people will become more aware of their redemption earlier than others. But Mashiach will come for everybody, and everybody will be redeemed. Nobody will be left behind. And I understand that there's certain rabbis out there who feel like if they instill fear in people, then that will really motivate people to do teshuvah. And listen, fear is a very powerful, powerful emotion. I mean, think of your little, I can think of my little 5-year-old. If she needs to go upstairs and the bedroom is dark, it's a very powerful, powerful motivation. She won't go into the dark room. She's just too scared. All of us, if we're really afraid of something, then it's something that really motivates us to do it. The problem with that is that, and I feel that, is that it's not really building a healthy relationship with God. It's seeing Hashem as an angry God, as a God who's vengeful, as a God who wants to meter out punishment. And it isn't true. That's not Hashem. And yes, there was suffering in the past. I pray nobody should ever suffer, God forbid, and Hashem should only give us tov and and we need to remember that if we say aviti pashati chatati, God, I'm sorry, God accepts that apology right away. We need to forgive ourselves. God forgives. That goes without saying. So I don't feel that it's the right way to, it wasn't the Rebbe's way. Okay, you know what I'm going to tell you? It wasn't the Lubavitcher Rebbe's way to ever scare people, to ever frighten people. He never opened his mouth negatively. He always predicted the Geula in a joyful, happy, peaceful way, and he said that that's where we should be journeying towards. That should be our focus, and that's how we should open our mouth. But as far as the journey, I want to use the very first Baal Tshuva in history was actually our forefather Avraham Avinu. Our first Jew was Avraham Avinu. When he was born to a man named Terach. Terach was the ultimate authority on idolatry. And he had an idol store. And don't think it wasn't just sticks and stones. The idols really had miraculous powers to them, whatever you want to call it. They were very attached to the koach of the sitra hara, of the negative forces, or what today we might call black magic. Although black magic doesn't exist today, I believe. I don't know. I don't know if anybody knows how to harness black magic today. But certainly the Torah, the Gemara, talks about its powers. And it was enclosed within different forms of idol worship. And they were very powerful. If a person was sick and went to the idols, they'd get well. If a person was sick and they needed money, they'd get... It wasn't a nonsense. And Avraham Avinu, so according to some opinions, at the age of 3, he discovered God. But according to the more common opinion, he finally discovered God at the age of 75. Right? And yet, what do we say? We say that Avraham Avinu, it says... We say it Rosh Chodesh. We say it today, no? V'Avram Zaken Ba Bayamim. Avram Avinu was old and he came with his days. What does it mean? He came with his days. Every single day was perfect. Every day he lived was perfect. The question is, what do you mean every day was perfect? For 75 years he served idols. He only came to God at the age of 75. So you're telling me that those 75 years, or even 3 years if you will, yeah, that he served idols were perfect? How could they be perfect? They were terrible. He was serving idols. What's the answer? Is that Avram Avinu was searching for the truth. And maybe he served idols during those years, but it was all in search of the truth. It was all a journey to come to the truth. And eventually he got there. He got to the truth. So doing teshuvah isn't an overnight thing. It will also, it's going to be too harsh. It's going to be too overwhelming. It's going to be unfair. It's going to completely jolt the people around us who know us and jolt ourselves. And Judaism isn't, God forbid, a cult. We don't lose ourselves in Judaism. We find ourselves in Judaism. Judaism isn't about just suddenly turning over and giving over our mind and not thinking for ourselves. In Judaism, you have to think for yourself. Oh, you have to think very hard, and you need to ask questions, and you need to negate, and you need to, look at things from different directions, and it has to resonate with you. It's not something that's superimposed on you. So the journey in growing into Teshuvah, a person has, so long as we're going in the right direction, then that's the right thing to do. That's what Hashem wants, and that day is perfect. Even if in that day the person may have eaten McDonald's sandwich. I mean, I'm just again using an example. If he's on the journey, says, you know what, Hashem, I want to keep kosher. I'm not ready yet, but you know what? Today I won't mix meat and milk, but I'll eat treif. Or today I'll only eat treif for breakfast, but lunch and dinner I'll eat kosher because I'm not there yet. I'm on my journey. I can't change myself overnight. This is what I've been used to, and I'm going to do it one bit at a time. For Hashem, that's so precious. And just like Avraham Avinu, who went through the journey of coming closer to God, but every day was perfect because every day he was on the path in the right direction. Our teshuvah, so long as the person is going on the path toward the right direction, that is teshuvah. And for anybody to point a finger and say, well, look at him, he hasn't yet started doing X, Y, and Z, whatever. He stepped into McDonald's. How can Mashiach come for him? How? That's so wrong. It's his relationship with God. He's growing. Teach him. Tell him, listen, maybe he doesn't yet know the value of the importance of keeping kosher, etc. So it's not emes because that's not Hashem, darling. Hashem doesn't expect us, to come with a big stick. And it's insulting to God. That's Manis Friedman's words. I remember I heard it many years ago. But he says to say that God is a vengeful God who's coming to take punishment. It's so insulting. I don't want to think of my Hashem like that. Of course we need to teach. Of course we need to grow. Don't misunderstand me. But it has to be in a way that resonates. Because if a person is told, unless you do teshuvah, tomorrow it's going to be an earthquake and the world's coming to an end. You know what will happen if tomorrow the earthquake didn't happen? Suddenly the fear will dissipate. Right now everybody is very uptight and there's been the virus and we've gone on lockdown and there's been a lot of unrest in the world, but we're going to get through it. And we're going to stay safe and we're going to stay well, Be'ezat Hashem. Hashem is watching over us. He's protecting us. We're going to keep doing the right thing. And we need to be very careful. Now, again, I don't know which rabbis you're referring to. So I can't answer that question. And I can only quote the rabbi or the rebbe that I really, Baruch Hashem, had the great zchut of learning from, is the Lubavitcher Rebbe. But he was being the forerunner. He was the one who woke up the world to Mashiach. Before the Rebbe opened his mouth and said, we want Mashiach now, nobody was looking in that direction. And guys, I can vouch for it from my own personal life. I was about 10 or 11 years old when the Rebbe came out with those words, we want Mashiach now, and the world was up in arms. The criticism and thank God we're not there anymore. Baruch Hashem. And the Rebbe said that we're going to have to keep doing this. Keep singing, we want Mashiach now. Keep talking about it, keep teaching. Just start with the little children. Start with them. The Rebbe started with the Tzivus Hashem. I was one of those kids. Start singing, we want Mashiach now. But let people wake up in their minds, because we can't bring Mashiach, can't come if we're still in Galut in our minds. What was the problem of the Jews who left Egypt? Why they kept complaining for Moshe Rabbeinu through the 40 years? They could have gone to Israel right away. But in their mind, they were not redeemed. Yes, they came out of Egypt, but they were like, oh no, what if we'll go to Israel and the big giants will destroy us? What do you mean? God took you out of Mitzrayim. Look at the 10 plagues. Look, he split the sea. He did all these miracles. And yet in their mind, they were still in exile. In their mind, the world was still a dangerous, bad, frightening place. It wasn't a world that they saw as a world we're in Hashem's hands. Hashem is protecting us. Hashem is watching over us. Hashem is making everything turn out good. God is protecting. He's bringing everything in a nice, happy, joyful, healthy way. They didn't see that. They only saw negative. And so they continued. They continued having that mentality, and that generation had to die in the desert. And only after that entire generation died out, and the next generation who didn't have Galut mentality anymore, they were the ones who went into the VeGeula. They were the ones who went in with Yeshua to get the land of Israel. We had to do the same thing with our generation, guys. And it's been a fight, and it's been a war that, I don't use the word a war, but it's been a wonderful, very frustrating journey. But it's been a journey. It's been a very, very strong journey, in that just the first reality has been that we've had to really let people know we are the last generation of the Galut. We are the first generation of the Geula. And every time the Rebbe spoke, every single time, that was his message to the world, that the world, Mashiach is coming and it's here and it's ready. But you got to get out of your Galut mentality. Stop talking about anti-Semitism and destruction and the world is bad and it's a scary place. No, the world is a Geula Dika place. But Hashem is ready to be revealed in this world. Focus on that. We're there. But we can't be there if we're not there in our minds. Sorry if I spoke for so long, VeGeula. Maybe next week we can touch on the subject a little bit more. If anybody has any questions, by the way, you're so welcome to text me and send me the questions. My apology, I just have a group of kids coming to hear a story now. So I'm going to have to log off. Sorry, guys. Thank you. But thanks for joining. Love you guys. And really, these days should switch into days of joy and happiness and simcha. Should only be revealed good. Thanks, guys. Love you guys. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Amen. We really enjoyed it.
Thank you, darling. Thank you, Diana.